and hopefully make any part of your safety program or processes a little bit more fortified. So thanks everybody for joining us. Great subject matter this morning. We're going to be dealing with fall protection and things that we need to know as contractors. And we've got a great subject matter expert with the OES group and Mark, and he's going to be jumping in here in just a second to drop it down on us. But before we get started, I wanted to just do the round table like we do at every safety forum, and let's talk about near misses. Is there anything out there that since the last time we've talked you've noticed out there in the field or on the job site that maybe we all need to be aware of, or we need to be forward thinking about for the safety of our crews and our workforce? And so anybody notice anything out there, anything we need to know about, or any advice that you've had to focus in on to, like I said, make sure things were safe? Anything out there? Got to be something.
We actually had one of our employees get hurt last week. They were extending over a panel to drill. It was just a panel can, and they were drilling holes, but they were extending because there was a hole in front of the panel, so they were extending a little bit more than they normally would, and it jerked it caught, and it actually broke the employee's hand. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it was one of those things that I talked to the employee too. I'm like, how many times have you drilled holes? And all the time, like, how many times has it kicked on the panel?
Every time.
Every time. I said, what was there wasn't any reason to do that. So
what size hole was he punching in it?
I think it was a 1 inch.
1 inch. So it probably grabbed him pretty good.
I just grabbed and just kicked it, and had a weird angle extended, so it wasn't like up against my body. It was arms fully out there. And
yep, you got to be able to take some resistance when you're doing that. And I'm sure, this is a good point for the group, right? I mean, I'm sure that you've all had a tool bind on you, whatever medium or whatever perishable bit you have, whether that's a hammer drill, or that's a wood drill, or a paddle bit, right? Or even hole saws, right? Or even step bits will grab on you, right? And if you don't have some leverage or put yourself in a position, to be able to handle some resistance on that, yeah, it can get you. I've seen many people, and the larger hole you try to drill, the more it's gonna bite, right? And so I've seen so many people spin themselves around in a circle, right, trying to cut a 1 inch, 2 inch hole in wood, right, for some penetration up above, and throws them right off a ladder sometimes. I've also seen people really leaning into a hammer drill right on the wall and stuff like that, and have that whole hammer drill come up and smack them in the jaw. It's funny kind of at the time, when you see it happen, but it's really dangerous because it's because you could give the advice all day, like, hey, don't put too much pressure on that. The more pressure you're going to give, if that thing binds, the more it's going to throw everything, right? It could even ruin equipment, right? If you're not bracing that piece of equipment, right? So just be super careful out there. Make sure you're giving your face some distance, right? Put some leverage in it. And remember that tools are there to work for us, not against us. And so if it's a struggle to use that tool, you're probably not doing it correct. So get yourself some cutting oil, right? Get yourself some stuff that will help assist, right, that whole cutting piece, especially if it's metal, right? So yeah, just be really careful out there. Good point, Jeff. Thanks for bringing that out, because it does happen. And whenever you have to use, right, a perishable, right, on a machine, so such as your bits, right, all of those things, there's all a safety aspects to it. So right on. Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything that they've noticed out there, something they've seen? Andy, did you have something?
Yeah, Bryce. You've met Bryce, or at least through Zoom. He's my son. He's also an IEC member. He was drilling a hole, and he broke his pinky. His glove caught the drill, and literally broke the whole thing in half. Like he's gonna have to have surgery and everything. You know,
And that was from a bit grabbing the glove.
I'm not 100% clear on what grabbed. Fortunately, it wasn't at work. He was wiring for his mom at his mom's house. So, I mean, at least it's not a comp thing, but it's still the same thing. It's work. I helped them plan it all out and everything, you know. So, but I'm not 100% sure. He says he doesn't even really remember. He kind of went in a little bit of shock when it happened. But basically, the drill caught his glove somehow and wrapped it around and then like grabbed his finger and like snapped it like a twig. I mean, you look at the x-ray, snapped in half just like a twig. So, you know, you think gloves, and gloves are important, but they're also a hazard to you know, catch something. And there's obviously the injury was far worse than the injury he would have had. It would have just, you know, wouldn't even grabbed anything, he would have been fine. So
Sure. And I've done that. I've had a drill bit grab my gloves before. You know, I have had that happen. Not to the point where it broke my finger, but I can tell you that it's not a good thing, right? Because that can cause some serious injury. So thank you, Andy. Yeah, just be sure that you're keeping your hands clear, right, of the holes you're drilling.
Right.
That stuff, though, those tools are meant to cut, and they have no problem taking little pieces of you, right, or breaking parts of you. You know, we do a lot of training here. One of the things that I always tell, especially like our pre-apprenticeship students and things like that have never, I mean, they don't even know anything about it, right? And I put a pair of strippers in their hands, right? And I say, hey, take a look at these strippers. You know, these are specialty tools, and they have no problem cutting copper or aluminum, and they will nip the end of your finger off if you're trying to go too fast, right? Anybody ever caught their hand with a pair of strippers? You know, never ever. Yeah, never. Going fast, right? Got me, right? So you got to be careful. So thank you for that. Yeah, use your tools right. You know, give yourself some room. And like I said, if you're trying to push a tool to do something, you're probably need to reassess that tool, right, or what it is that you're doing. So, what else we got? Anybody else out there seeing anything that we need to be aware of, or some advice we can take back home to our organizations to be a little bit more safe? Sure is quiet. You guys are a safe group, which is totally awesome. Thank you for that. So, having said that, just real quick, our next safety forum for May, it's actually, you guys know that May is the OSHA stand down for safety, right, month. And so what we're looking at doing, given kind of the world that we live in right now, it's going to be really geared towards emergency preparedness. Okay, so whether that's in your office building or on your job sites, right? If there's an emergency situation that happens, that there is a process and a protocol to follow to help mitigate that issue, right? And so when we're talking about emergency preparedness, we're also talking about some mental health in there, right? Identifying things like that on the job sites or within your businesses. You're seeing a lot of our violence right now in our world is substantial. And we want to make sure that when we're out there doing our thing, that not just that we're safe when it comes to our work, but we're also safe around the people that we're working with, you know. And so that will be more than likely the focus of the May session for OSHA stand down. But today we're going to be concentrating on fall protection and fall safety. So I want to introduce Mark with the OES group, and he actually joined us last year for the fall protection back in February. It was a great presentation and a great presenter. So we're thankful for him to join us again today. Thank you, Mark. We really appreciate it. And I know you've got a lot of great information for the group. And so if you'd like, man, just tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get rolling.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate it, Paul. Again, my name is Mark Malaysia. I'm with the OES Products Group. We are a independent manufacturer rep agency. We focus and specialize on safety products and PPE. And we try to bring a very consultative approach to the end user like you guys to help you be a resource for you and a trusted resource for you when it comes to safety products in the industry. As many of you are aware, safety products are currently and always evolving. And sometimes it's hard to keep up with the ever evolving market in PPE. So we try to really make a specialized push to keep you guys educated and informed on new products, new standard changes, things of that nature in the safety world. So today, Paul invited me to come out and do a presentation for you guys on fall protection. I found it fitting to probably touch on the new ANSI standard change that's taking into effect for retractable devices in August of this year. It's a big change, one of the biggest changes in the Z359 standard in quite some time. So it's extremely important that you guys are up to speed on this change. And how it's going to affect you guys in the workforce. So I'm going to share my screen right now, Paul. I've got a PowerPoint presentation. Can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So as I'd mentioned, this is a big Z359 update, and this update includes full body harnesses as well, but they're very minor changes on full body harnesses. The meat and potatoes of this new standard update is in the retractable devices. So today, this is more of a condensed version because I know you guys are all very busy and you got a lot on your plate right now. So we want to make sure that this is giving you the right information that you need, but without inundating you with a bunch of minutia that might not apply. So we'll review the standard changes. I'll probably touch a little bit on the full body harnesses, but again, it's a very minor change that's probably not going to affect what you guys are doing in the field right now. Compliance timelines, and then grandfathering in existing equipment that you have in the field currently. So just to kind of give you guys a little rundown of this update and what future updates will look like. One of the major changes that takes place with this update and future updates was the test mass that the retractable devices are used with. So previously the test mass was 282 pounds, and ANSI has upped that to a full 310 pound test mass for all testing on retractable devices. So really what this is trying to do is, again, make the test a little more stringent. We want to make sure that the equipment that's being used is put at levels of the utmost difficulty in terms of testing and passing. So they ended up going ahead and raising that test mass to a full 310 pounds. We want more and more standardizing on labeling and user instruction information. So there's a big push on this particular standard change for more standardized labeling from all fall protection manufacturers. And then instruction information is going to be more standardized moving forward as well. So I know a lot of people kind of use a hodgepodge of fall protection products. Some people have one particular brand that they use. Other people use a mix and match. So when you're using mix and matches, sometimes the labeling and the instructions can be very different from each manufacturer. So we want to really try to look at making that more streamlined and standardized across all different manufacturers and fall protection equipment. And then this is just a little note here. ANSI is a standard that they're looking for more balance, more membership balance. So there's definitely a desire for more end user to be on ANSI committees. So if there's any interest in potentially looking at being on one of the ANSI committees in Z359 fall protection, you can reach out to me later and I can get you in touch with the right people with ANSI. So the new Z359.14. The .14 standard is the standard for retractable devices. You'll notice here that it was approved in 2021, which is why you have the 2021 date on there. We're in 2023 now, and it still isn't in effect. A big portion of that is there were a lot of fall protection manufacturers that were not ready for this change when it was supposed to take into effect. It was actually supposed to take into effect in 2021. It got pushed to 2022. Some of the larger fall protection manufacturers were not ready with equipment during that time. So it got pushed to August 1st of 2023. So it's actually been pushed 2 or 3 times since the standard adoption. But now, no questions asked, any ANSI compliant fall protection manufacturer must have class 1 and class 2 devices by August 1st of this year. So the classifications are a little bit different. The reason for the classification change is to simplify it for the end user. And ANSI's done a very good job of doing that. So previous classifications for retractable devices in the 2014 standard, you had SRLs, which is a self-retracting lifeline, SRLs-R, which is the rescue devices used on davit systems and tripods, and then the SRL-LE, which is the leading edge compliant equipment. And then you had a Class A and Class B specification. The Class A and Class B specification was a specification that determined the arrest distance on the units. So a Class A device was required to lock up within 24 inches, and a Class B device was required to lock up within 54 inches. But there was some confusion there because you could have Class A devices that were leading edge, and then you could have Class B devices that were leading edge. And there was just a lot of confusion with those different classifications. So the new 2021 standard will replace those classifications. So now you will have a Class 1 device and a Class 2 device, and I will go over the differences between Class 1 and Class 2 here shortly. And then you've changed your categories of the retractable devices. We still have SRL, self-retracting lifelines, but now you have SRL-Ps, which are the personal devices, the devices that you actually wear to your body. And then you will have the SRL-R, which is the rescue devices. This is just a quick snapshot of the different types of retractables. So again, the SRLs are the larger units, 20, 30, 50, 60 foot units. The SRL-Ps are those personal units that you wear to your body. And then of course the SRL-Rs was the rescue device, the 3-way devices that are used on tripods and davit systems. Class 1 and Class 2 now in terms of offering. So this is kind of a snapshot of the different Class 1 and Class 2 devices. And what the difference between Class 1 and Class 2 devices is very simple. A Class 1 device is a device that must be anchored at or above your D-ring. A Class 2 device is a device that can be anchored anywhere. So at or above your D-ring, or up to 5 feet below your D-ring, which in many cases is foot level tie-off. So in that case, all Class 2 devices are default leading edge devices. So again, the reason for this standard change was to simplify it for the end user. If you have a Class 1 device, that is a device that can only be anchored at or above your D-ring. And if you have a Class 2 device, that is a device that can be anchored anywhere. So it really takes away the guesswork. And ANSI is really trying to make a hard push to move the industry more into Class 2 devices. Because there would be less issues for misuse with a Class 2 device than a Class 1 device. I'm sure you guys have seen this in your tenure, being on a job site and an employee using a non-leading edge product that's anchored to the deck. If that happens and they take a fall, that could be catastrophic for the user. So in order to mitigate some of those misuses, really trying to push the industry into Class 2 devices. Some of the overall performance, this is all overhead performance. So in the 2014 standard Class A and Class B, your maximum arresting force was 1,800 pounds. Your average arresting force on a Class A was about 1,350, and a Class B was about 900. And then your arrest distance, as you can see, 24 for a Class A and a 54 for Class B. So the new overhead performance standards in the new 2021 standard have changed. Your maximum arresting force is still that 1,800 pounds. Your average arrest force now is 1,350, so closer to the Class A. And then your arrest distance is 42 inches for your average arrest distance. So we kind of split the difference between A and B. Now, again, the reason why that average arresting force is much larger or much higher than the previous version in a Class B is obviously your lockup speed or your lockup distance is shortened. So the shorter your lockup distance, the more arrest forces your body's going to see. It's been shortened, but we were able to keep it at that 1,350. And when I say we, this is going to be on average. Most fall protection manufacturers are all going to have very, very similar average arresting forces with the 42-inch arrest distance. And then you also have to remember that we are testing this on a 310-pound test mass. So this is the absolute worst case scenario. There's very few people that are 310 pounds that are working at heights, but on your average person that are working at heights, your arrest forces are probably going to be lower than that 1,350, but that's the maximum. That's the average arrest force that you're probably going to see with the new standard change. Testing requirements. So again, the testing requirements have changed slightly. So again, we're moving into that 310-pound test mass for all testing versus the 282. Another big component to this standard change is the static testing requirement. So the previous static test where they actually pull the line was 3,000 pounds. We would pull the line with 3,000 foot-pounds. It's now been upgraded to 3,600 foot-pounds. So where you're going to see a challenge with that is units that are designed with a 3/16 cable, and then you're going to see a significant compliance challenge with stainless steel cable units because stainless steel is very brittle, and most of the stainless steel units in the marketplace will not meet that 3,600-pound test pull test. So that will probably change. They'll probably beef up the cable diameter on stainless steel in order for it to meet that requirement. But you're going to see some of those units be challenged to have stainless steel right now with their current iteration of a 3/16 cable. Another change that's happened was the carabiners. This was in response to the large 3M Nanolock recall that happened a few years ago. So what they've done is really just beefed up the carabiners for the personal units for the SRL-P connectors. So they've beefed those up quite a bit in order to meet some more stringent pull testing. So essentially it's made it to be a safer product. There's more testing in terms of wraparound tieback product, webbed abrasion for testing for tieback product, lock pawl testing, SRLP misuse testing. So there's quite a few more tests that they're doing with the new 2021 standard change to really mitigate as many faults and issues as possible. So again, this just kind of shows you the differences between the labeling. So all fall protection manufacturers will have the same consistent label on their retractable devices. So whether it's a Faltech product or a DBI product or a Miller product, they will all have the same labeling. So again, with that labeling consistency and standardizing on that labeling, it'll be very easy for you as the end user to look at that. And a Class 1 device will be a white box with black lettering. And then all Class 2 devices will be a black box with white lettering, and that'll be on the back of the unit. so you guys can see that visually. Unchanged in terms of the standard, the leading edge sharpness still remains at 0.005 mic'd edge. So it's basically a razor blade edge that they're doing the leading edge drop testing on. And there's been no provisions for any testing on any other substrates besides steel. So on the leading edge test, the only test they do it on is steel. We at Faltech go above and beyond, and we'll a lot of the times test on concrete and different edge substrates. But there's no provisions for that through ANSI that they require. This is just a little white paper discussion. And Paul, this would probably be something that you guys would benefit from. I can send this particular piece, which goes over the PowerPoint presentation in less of a PowerPoint format. That way you guys can take a look at this, read through this, so you have a better understanding of the standard changes and what those kind of, once again, reiterate what I discussed with you today. So the next big point that comes up on every presentation is grandfathering. So what does this mean for you guys and your current existing product in the marketplace right now? Whoops, went back there. So ANSI is a voluntary consensus standard. So there's no ANSI police that will come out and tell you that you're not ANSI compliant. ANSI is purely a voluntary standard. ANSI is gold standard. So ANSI goes above and beyond what OSHA requires in the workforce, but it is voluntary. So you don't have to be an ANSI compliant end user. Obviously, many end users are ANSI compliant, and their safety programs are extremely important for them. So they want to stay ahead of the 8 ball and on the cutting edge of the newest standards. But it is a voluntary standard. So manufacturer rules are different than end users. So as a manufacturer, we would be out of compliance as an ANSI compliant manufacturer if we did not have Z359.14-2021 compliant product. That's the old date. It's by August 1st of 2023. So ANSI is more stringent on the manufacturers than they are on the users. So in order to be an ANSI compliant manufacturer, we have to abide by many different guidelines. And again, if we did not have product by August 1st of 2023 with the newest standard, we would no longer be considered an ANSI compliant manufacturer of fall protection. As an end user, you would be out of ANSI compliance if you were using a product that did not have the 2021 standard on it. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the product is not good. So you are able to use that product in the field, and it's not product that's bad. It's not product that will fail. It just won't be in ANSI compliance after that August 1st, 2023 date. So it can be used, it can be very black and white. So depending on general contractors, I know there's a few general contractors in the market right now that are going to be requiring all Class 2 devices on their projects. So if they require a Class 2 device, at that point, you're going to have Class 2 compliant product. Many general contractors probably won't require, but just keep that in mind as you look at fall protection equipment. There is a strict interpretation with EM 385. So if many of you guys work with the Army Corps of Engineers, you'll know that they're extremely strict when it comes to fall protection. And if you're on an EM 385 Army Corps of Engineers project, you can almost be guaranteed that by August 1st, 2023, if you do not have devices that have the new 2021 labeling on them, you will probably be asked to get those from the Army Corps of Engineers. There's a very strict interpretation with them. So just be aware of that. And then, why does it matter? So one thing that we like to talk about with end users is, unfortunately, in fall protection, it's a buyer beware market out there. There's probably close to 70 different fall protection manufacturers. A lot of fall protection manufacturers do not make or manufacture the product themselves. A lot of them will third-party outsource the product then put their label on it. So they don't have control of the testing process. They don't have control of the manufacturing process or the R&D process. And basically they're relying on the manufacturer of the product to provide them something that is compliant to the newest standard. There's a lot of fabrication that happens in the marketplace. So it truly is a buyer beware market. So what I'd like to tell end users like yourself is when you are vetting fall protection manufacturers, make sure that you're looking for a fall protection manufacturer that is an ANSI compliant manufacturer, that is an ISO 9001 manufacturer, and that does their testing in an ISO 17025 lab for their fall protection equipment. So not only that, but all fall protection manufacturers are required to have a third-party certification. So us at Falltech, we have every single one of our products that is third-party certified. So we actually have an independent company come in, witness the testing, and they put their signature of approval on it. Not all fall protection manufacturers will do that. If they don't, they are no longer in ANSI compliance as an ANSI compliant fall protection manufacturer. So there's a lot of odds and ends, and I'm not going to get into a huge amount of that right now. If that's something that you guys are interested in learning about and how to truly vet your fall protection manufacturer, I'm happy to have that conversation offline with any of you. That way you have a better understanding of what you need to be looking for when it comes to your fall protection equipment. We talked about gloves earlier. Fall protection is a category of PPE that is critical issue equipment, where it can really be a matter of life and death. The one gentleman, his son broke his pinky, which was obviously sounds extremely painful. The good news is they'll probably be able to fix that, and he'll probably be able to go back to work relatively quick. With critical issue equipment, if you have an piece of equipment that's supposed to keep you from hitting the ground fail, obviously that can be catastrophic to the user. So using a fall protection manufacturer that has a high level of transparency and is very open to their testing and very open to, obviously, in order to be ANSI compliant, is extremely important in that position. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to chime in. Like I said, if you have questions offline, Paul can share my information. You can call, you can email, you can text, whatever you guys need. I'm happy to answer any of those questions for you.
Very awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. That's great information. And being that, right, especially if you're doing that big federal or public sector type of work, they might be checking that stuff out. So it looks like we've got some safety equipment we need to inspect, right? And we've got to make sure that we've got the right up-to-date listed safety products out there. So thank you so much for that. There was another thing you talked about yesterday a little bit, Mark, and just if you could just touch base on it a little bit. You were talking about kind of a new initiative that doesn't necessarily pertain all the way to fall protection, but you were talking about hard hats to helmets.
Yes. Yep.
I'd love to, if you can, just kind of do a briefing with the group, if you can. I know it's not really exactly related to falls. You do wear that equipment as PPE for fall protection, but would you touch base a little bit on the hard hats to helmets?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's I don't know how familiar you guys are with some of the safety helmet changes that are happening in the industry, but much of the industry is moving away from hard hats and moving into safety helmets. And I don't know how many different projects you guys might be on right now currently, to where general contractors are requiring safety helmets. But the industry is moving away from hard hats and moving into a safer product, which is safety helmets. And essentially what we're doing is we're changing the industry to provide a safer product. And I've got a PowerPoint presentation too, Paul, that we could maybe do in another session for safety helmets and the reason for the change. But when you look at the statistics and what's happening in the industry, occupational statistics, there were 850 fall fatalities, and 50% of those were traumatic brain injury related in 2021. So when you look at the amount of traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, that are occurring, and these are just fatalities. When you look at injuries, those are even higher. But it's significant when it comes to traumatic brain injuries. So what the industry has done is moving into a more safety helmet style of head protection. So we're getting away from the suspension systems and we're moving into EPS foam systems, and foam systems that are designed to absorb impact and energy forces through full 360 degrees, so side, front, and rear, and which is providing a much safer product and a much safer way to prevent traumatic brain injury. So when you look at falls in particular, the first thing that happens during a fall is you lose your hard hat. So if you lose your hard hat, you have nothing to protect your head. And the hard hat was actually designed in the early 1900s. And it was designed with one intensive purpose, which was to prevent falling objects from hitting your head. And if you guys look at the Z89 standard for head protection, it is very much a dropped object standard. It's not a slips, trips, and fall standard. It's not a head protection standard. It's a dropped object standard. If you look at it's the first section under limitations. It talks about being able to provide protection against nuts, bolts, rivets, sparks. So it doesn't talk anything about slips, trips, and falls. And when you look at the statistics, the bulk majority of traumatic brain injuries are coming from slips, trips, and falls, whether that's same surface falls or falls at heights. That's where traumatic brain injuries are occurring. So that's why much of the industry has moved away from hard hats and is moving into safety helmets. When you look at the general contractors right now that are using it, I'd say about 90% of all the large general contractors across the country have now moved to safety helmets. And a good portion of them are now requiring trade partners to use safety helmets on their projects. Turner, Mortensen, McCarthy, Clark Construction, those guys are all requiring safety helmets now for trade partners on their projects moving forward. So, and you'll probably start seeing more and more follow suit. Companies like Saunders, Hensel Phelps, those guys are all using safety helmets right now. And that's going to be a bigger and bigger push. So in the next, probably, I would say 3 years, maybe sooner, I think the hard hat will probably will be extinct, and the industry will move to safety helmets. So, and again, that's something, Paul, that we can definitely touch on when we have a little more time on another session. And I can talk more about the transition to hard hats to helmets. Not all helmets are created equal. So we represent the industry leader, which is Cask. But there's a lot of different products out there right now that are claiming to be helmets, but they're essentially glorified hard hats. So again, that's where it's a buyer beware market. Make sure that you guys are educating yourselves on what you need to be looking for out of a helmet and a head protection program for your company. And again, that's something that I can certainly help with on another session where we have a little bit more time and kind of go into the details on what standards you need to be looking for and what standards need to be met for the next generation of head protection.
Great information, right? That's great information. Definitely something, when we're talking about slips, trips, right? That's the bigger and most common things that we have out there. And you're right, those hard hats, they come off if your head is in a certain position, especially if you're going down, right? And so having some type of strap or harness, and you said front, side, and back protection, I can see it. We have a couple of helmets that we have here, and hard hats, right? So there's a lot out there in both, but there's definitely a difference when it comes to the amount of protection you get from them. So great information, and let's do that, Mark. Let's maybe schedule a time with our safety forum where we can go over today's technology as far as head protection goes. So that would be very awesome. Thank you for that. I wanted to just open up the group. Was there any questions that you had for Mark? Anything that you would like to talk about? Maybe you've experienced on your job sites, somebody that has fallen, and kind of what are some of the processes and some of the things you got to do, right, to get them off, right? Is it a first responder first, when you check in when somebody falls? I mean, how are you, or how did you take care of that scenario? Is anybody willing to share on that? Or maybe not have it happen, which would always be good news. It is the number one, right, at OSHA. You're making it too easy on a Wednesday morning. Too easy. Okay, well, stay tuned. You will see communication out of today's recording. And if you can, Mark, can you just send that presentation to me? We'd love to be able to get the recap out as soon as possible, but if you could send that over, that would be awesome. And thank you again. And we'll be in touch with you, Mark. And as far as the rest of the group, remember next month is the OSHA stand down, and we're looking at doing something behind, like I said, emergency preparedness for our job sites and within our offices. And we're always open, right, for anything that you all as safety professionals, if you see something out there or you notice something that we need to get to our group and to our other companies, let us know, because all of these scheduled safety forums are adjustable. As much as we like to set it in stone for planning, if there is something we need to focus in on, we can pivot and get to that subject matter. So thanks for everybody for joining. You'll see a recap coming out later on today. And if there's no other questions, this has to be one of the earliest safety forums that we've had in a while. And I'll let you get back to your Wednesday. Is there anything that anybody needs? And don't forget, next Friday, Cinco de Mayo. Okay, we have a car show going on here at the campus from 3 to 6. We have our competitors, first through fourth year, competing for our apprenticeship of the year and our wire off competitions. We're going to have Federated coming in to do a drive safe safety session. We're going to have sponsored food, right? Music. It's going to be a great time. So if you have time in your calendar, next Friday, Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, please come by from 3 to 6. Check out our next generation electricians showcasing their skills. Come take a look at some really cool cars and motorcycles, as well. We'll be having a car show. Get yourself some street tacos, maybe have a cerveza safely. So we'd love to see you. And having said that, reach out if you need anything. Thank you, group, for joining us.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for handling it today. We'll be reaching out for more information, my friend. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks.